The root of the problem just might have something to do with the way that we were originally created to be and a little thing I like to call clutter regression. Let's talk more about that coming up next. Well, hello friend, I'm Mary Beth from the At What Cost blog, where we are learning how to apply God's truth to our everyday lives. You may be looking at the scene behind me and you're probably thinking, didn't we just do this a few videos ago? Well, yeah, despite my best efforts, it keeps looking like this. I can't look at it anymore. And you know what? I bet you can't either. So if you'll excuse me just a moment, I will be right back. So I cleared off some of these surfaces and just sorted through all of the things that I had, found homes for the things that needed homes, and got rid of the stuff that just didn't belong. There's like all kinds of stuff in here. And if you watched our previous videos, it's different stuff than it was the last time. And so that's part of what we're going to talk about today. The other part of it is how God made us to be. Now, I have been spending some time in Genesis, and I was reminded again how beautiful and wonderful and extravagant life was before the fall. So as we think about this idea of how God originally created us, let's look at his original creation. And when I say us, I'm really talking about mankind in general. You know, from Adam and Eve, our DNA has not evolved a whole lot. Our circumstances may, but that original sin and original desire has been passed down from generation to generation. So we can see that initially when Adam and Eve were created, they were set in the Garden of Eden, which is basically translated to be an enclosed or protected area of beauty or delight. That word Eden is best translated as delight. So here are Adam and Eve in the garden, and God gives them work. He gives them a purpose. You know, we can look at work today and think, oh man, that's overwhelming. I don't want to do that. Or you probably have had a large task in front of you at some point, stood back, admired your hard work, and felt pretty proud of yourself for completing that task. You find enjoyment in some of that work. Then in Genesis 3, we see sin enter the picture, and Adam and Eve are cast out of the garden. However, of all the punishments that God so justly and mercifully gives, changing our original desires was not one of them. We are still created to desire the garden. The punishment has come that all of the work now that Adam and Eve will do will be filled with toil and labor. So this isn't enjoyable work. This is a struggle and frustration to get the job done. And with us, we still see remnants of this today. So that is the first issue that we have when we approach these types of tasks. We have a desire to recreate that garden. We have a desire to be in a protected area where we can delight in the beauty of God's creation. But it's tainted with all kinds of frustration, toil, and things that cloud our judgment. They bring us back to that place where we don't feel comfortable. But it doesn't mean that we aren't capable of having a piece of heaven right here on earth. We can cultivate a place in our home that really helps us to feel like we are bringing glory and honor to God. It's important to understand that there's so much more to it than just a clean office. But y'all, this mess clouds my judgment, it clouds my intentions, it distracts me away from what I need to do, and it shifts my gaze away from those things that are good, beautiful, and delightful in the Lord. My time and energy ends up being devoted to things that are really not productive to my day. They're not essential, and they become nothing more than distractions. So let's talk about the second issue here, and that is this idea of clutter regression. Now, you probably have heard this term before, especially when we think about kids, the way that maybe they have lost some of the things that they knew over the summer break, or maybe even when a new sibling is brought into the home. Sometimes it happens even with potty training. But that idea of regression can happen to us as well. There are really two ways that this happens. The first is with horizontal surfaces. Now, if you've realized in this office, I got a whole lot of stuff that's all the same height and it's completely open space. The storage solutions in this room are just not working. And at some point in a future episode, when I can convince my husband that this wall would look amazing with like built-in cabinets and shelves like on either side, wouldn't it look so great? Just saying. Advocate for me in the comments, y'all. Seriously. Anyway. But horizontal surfaces are great places to just lay things down and then forget them, and then they pile up. We look at the piles, it becomes overwhelming, and we don't want to deal with it. The second issue is not recognizing that there are really two different types of spaces in our home. There are areas that are more fluid, that may change, but it's typically predictable. Think like your refrigerator. Yeah, from time to time it gets a little messy, but there's really only two options for the items that are in there. If we go to clean our refrigerator out, we're either eating them or tossing them. This could even be true about our wardrobes. We're either gonna wear it or we're gonna declutter it. Those spaces tend to be a little bit easier for me to manage. Even if I get off track, it's usually a pretty simple solution to get it back reset where I like it to be. The next space though is just a little different. I think of these as variable spaces. That's exactly what this office is. I have little to no control over the things that come into it, whether it's mail, school papers, things that people bring us, stuff that gets taken out of a purse or a book bag. All of the random things just seem to find their way into this office. And because I have so many horizontal surfaces, it's the perfect place to dump things off. The problem with these variable spaces is that it takes a lot more mental energy for me to manage the items that come in here. Whether it's paper that I need right now, things that may come in here that I will never need again, or simply things that just need to be put away. Sometimes it's as random as a kid's hanger and a few Legos, but once they've been laid on the counter, in come all the other things. So having a space where things that come in are unique and different, they may be similar in nature, but handling them often can mean very different things. So how do we get a handle on these more variable areas of our home? Well, the first is by going back to God's original commission to Adam and Eve when they were first created, to rule and subdue. We are to reflect God's image in a way that we can bring order out of chaos, which is exactly what these variable areas of our home are. They're just chaos. Now, chaos sometimes feels like something that's out of our control, but really when we get down to the nitty-gritty of it, it's actually very easy for us to do. We can sort things into different categories. People set up grocery stores all of the time. In these variable spaces, we want to create loose systems that adjust to the flow over time. So let's use my kids' school paperwork as an example. In our house, we have everything from IEPs to little half sheets of paper reminding us that my kids can have shaved ice on Friday. These are things that I don't necessarily need to keep long term. Now, the IEP eligibility forms, I want to hang on to those, maybe for a while. So I may have a range of long-term, short-term, and action now type papers. Now, do I set up a filing system that has a folder for each one of those things? I mean, maybe. if that's how you're wired, then go for it. I know this isn't the popular thing. Like, I know some of y'all are not going to want to hear this answer, but some of this journey is not just recreating a 1, 2, 3 step for making your home an area that looks exactly like that Pinterest perfect picture. Much of this journey is figuring out what matters the most to you and how you best can live in your space. We want our spaces to serve us rather than the other way around. That's our charge, right? To rule and subdue, to have dominion over God's creation. So when it comes to paper, the best system for you may be to have a very loose long-term storage, short-term storage, and take action now type of system. What I have found works best for me is adding those short-term, like, do this right now. Don't forget that you have to send candygrams by October 23rd. I handle those things as soon as they come out of my kids' folders. If I put them down on my desk, they get lost in the horizontal clutter pile. But some of those other things, like assessments or progress reports, I don't necessarily need to look at those again in the near future. They're definitely not short-term storage if they are from the previous year, but I keep those ones for the current school year in my short-term storage file. And you don't have to be fancy with this. I have a filing cabinet only because my work demanded it of me several years ago, and we just can't bear to part with it. And I use the term we loosely. I love you, honey. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing for you. It could be a file box. It could be a small stack of shoe boxes on a shelf or in a cabinet that you've freed up some space in. Another way that we can begin to bring order to the chaos is by recognizing these spaces to begin with in our home. Now, my office is not the only place where this clutter regression tends to happen. I set up this wonderful charging station where everyone could bring their electronics. They plug right into the nearby outlet, and it's all going to be wonderful and contained. But do you know what it actually holds? A bunch of random junk, extra mail, and things I don't know what to do with. That's an area of our home that I have to handle as variable clutter. That may mean that sometimes I need to be ready to part with something right then and there. I need to stop what I'm doing, find a home for it, or decide whether or not it deserves a home in our home. Identifying these sort of landing areas and how you would like to best use them in your home and for which purpose is half the battle. Once we've identified some of those more variable areas in our home, we can start to assign them roles and even responsibilities sometimes. If I need a basket to act as a charging station, then I've got to help manage that basket to be sure that it's able to do its job appropriately. That's part of being God's creation and ruling and subduing the chaos in our lives. If you want to learn more about how I've decluttered this office in the past or about self-care, be sure to click on the videos that you see right here and right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.